I think we're live. Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you. My name is Nkeiruka Whenu, and I'm the CEO and founder of Web3Z. And today I'm going to be teaching you a little bit about Web3 so that we can demystify what exactly this topic is and get involved. So let me share my screen. I have made what I think is a great presentation that will kind of get us in the know about the woes and the wonders of Web3, because there are many of both. So oh, there we go. Perfect. So I believe everyone can see my screen. If for whatever reason you can't, please do get involved. But welcome to the woes and wonders of Web3. Let's get started. So I am primarily a software engineer. I'm also a cybersecurity student studying my master's. I'm the CEO and founder of Web3Z. We make Web3 easy. We introduce kids to emerging technologies through online after-school clubs and other technical avenues. And I'm a Web3 and emerging technology enthusiast. So I'm not sure what level of interactivity we are going to have in this session, but I did want to give you an attempt at 4 truths and 2 lies. So rather than get a kind of response from the audience, I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds to think in their heads about whether each thing that comes up on the screen is a truth or a lie. So the first one is it true or false that I have traveled to more than 20 countries? I love that TikTok waiting music that should be playing right now. Give another 5 seconds. Symbiac thinks it's true. Thinks it's true. It is true. I'm very fortunate to be able to travel a lot. I love traveling. I'm off to Sweden next week, although that's for work. And my favorite countries that I've been to have been India and Tunisia, as well as Nigeria, which is where I'm from. Okay, amazing. Well done to everyone who may have guessed that right. Number 2, is it true or false that I auditioned for The Apprentice in 2019? Pensive. Not too sure. This is actually true. Now, I didn't get in, but it was a fantastic experience finding out what people are looking for, what real business looks like in the very beginning stages, and when it gets a bit more mature. So it really began to set the stage for me for what a business could look like for me, because this is way before Web3Z. And I think I might have been around 18 at the time. I was probably still in university, and I just wanted to see how things would go. So I'm really happy I got to the stage where I was able to get to the in-person auditions, but in the end, I didn't go through. But it's great because everything is a learning experience. Number 3. Is it true or false that I used to make singing and gaming YouTube videos? How do we feel about this one? Do we think that I had the star power to make singing and gaming YouTube videos? Some people think it's true. Some people know this one. So, not sure about star power, but I did definitely make singing and gaming YouTube videos. I love singing, I love gaming, and these are 2 hobbies that I wish I had more time to practice. Number 4, is it true or false that I own a 360-degree omnidirectional running pad for VR gaming? So if you don't know what this is, you may or may not have seen it. It's basically like think of a treadmill, but it's circular and it goes in all directions. So you would put on a VR headset and you would run in any given direction. And in this immersive experience, it feels like you're like running through the planes of whatever world that you're in. So some people think this is true. I wish this were true. This is a long-term goal for me. These things are very expensive, but I would love this kind of apparatus to really get involved in my gaming a lot more. But yes, it's not true for now. Number 5, is it true or false that I've been working on a novel for more than 6 years? How do we feel about this one? Some people are saying true. Some people think true. This is true, kind of. I haven't necessarily been very steady in working on the novel, but I do like to make contributions here and there, and eventually I'm sure that we will see it somewhere. And finally, technically by process of elimination, so maybe I should move this one. Is it true or false that I put the milk in before the cereal? Not too sure about this one. True, false. This is false. I do this the only way that should be done, which is the cereal before the milk, so that you can actually visualize how much milk you might need for that amount of cereal. It's okay. I understand that there are some people who think otherwise. But thank you everyone for playing this game with me. This is just a little bit about myself, and hopefully this contextualizes some of the things that we're going to see today in our session. Yes, you have to put the cereal in first. Okay, so what are we going to be covering today? First and foremost, we'll discuss what Web3 actually is, and we'll break this down so that we actually know what we're talking about for the rest of the session. Then I figured we'd start off with the woes of Web3 first. So this is talking about why Web3 isn't quite working right now, or why it hasn't been as adopted as other technologies. Then we'll jump into the Web3 wonders, which is why it will be adopted as much as other technologies in the near future, at least according to my calculations. And then finally, we'll discuss what's next when it comes to Web3 and what is on the horizon. So what is Web3? So we hear the term Web3 and we usually think of cryptocurrency, perhaps really unstable markets. And cryptocurrency is built upon the concept of Web3. And unstable markets may be to do with cryptocurrency, but unstable markets are not to do with Web3. This is not all it has to offer. Fundamentally, what Web3 is the concept of reading, writing, and owning information on the internet. So the version of the internet that we use right now operates on a read and write system. You consume information from BBC News, Twitter, Instagram, any social media really, any website. You read blog posts, and then from time to time you may also post information, you may write information to the internet. That's posting on Instagram, posting stories on Snapchat, anything that is more of a push mechanism from you to the internet. But Web3 brings in this idea of ownership of the digital items that you push onto the internet. And if there's anything that you take away from this session today, it's that Web3 is read, write, and own. Whereas Web2, what we're on right now, is read and write. So Web3 allows users to have more control over their data and ownership of their digital assets and identity on the internet. So let's put this in one sentence. Web3 is a new iteration of the World Wide Web of the internet that incorporates concepts such as blockchain technologies, decentralization, and token-based economics. So there's some big words in here. Decentralization is the concept that any given system does not have a central authority. In fact, it has a distributed authority. So for example, if we have multiple computers on a network, actually no, let's break this down even further. Let's take the idea of banks. Maybe half of us have a Barclays account, for example. There is one board of directors for Barclays. And all of our money goes into Barclays only. It doesn't go into Santander, doesn't go anywhere else. There is a central authority in Barclays that oversees all this funding. However, there are other methods of authority, such as distributed authority or decentralized systems, where the authority is not within one group and it's actually spread over multiple people. And usually things are achieved through voting mechanisms or other techniques as well. And that is actually what underpins decentralized finance, which we'll look into a little bit later. Okay, so let's have a discussion on the timeline of Web3. So in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, which is actually a pseudonym for a person who we do not know. We actually don't know this person. But Satoshi Nakamoto introduces Bitcoin, which is the first cryptocurrency. I know we're thinking crypto, but this is a talk about Web3. Hold on, I promise they are related. By 2014, the term Web3 was coined in 2014 by Ethereum co-founder Gavin Wood. Now, Ethereum is a blockchain. This was the second biggest blockchain after Bitcoin. And blockchain is a technology that is built upon the concept of Web3. By 2018, 2019, decentralized finance comes into play and it gains traction and begins redefining financial services. So at this point, we're hearing a lot about crypto markets, we're hearing a lot about trading, but in the idea of of digital finance. By 2021, non-fungible tokens surge in popularity, transforming digital art and collectibles. So these are your NFTs. These are your digital assets. And around this time frame, there were nothing more than like PNGs of monkeys in silly hats. And that's probably what everyone has in mind when they think of NFTs. In 2022, we begin to see the metaverse coming into existence and adopting Web3 technology. So why did I pick up on each of these five things in this kind of order? Well, all of these things that we've just discussed, Satoshi Nakamoto and Bitcoin, Ethereum, decentralized finance, NFTs, the metaverse, are all built upon Web3, which again is the ideology of reading, writing, and owning. Okay, so if anyone has been chronically online in the tech space for a while, you may remember when crypto entrepreneur Sina Estavi brought Jack Dorsey's tweet in 2021 for $2.9 million. What's so special about this tweet? Nothing much other than it was the first tweet ever made. And Jack effectively monetized this by turning it from just a tweet that we see on our browsers into an NFT, a non-fungible token. Non-fungible means that the value, like I can't trade this token for another because it's not the same. These are not two identical things and therefore they're not identical in value. This is dissimilar to when you perhaps go into a shop and you buy a loaf of bread and then someone else goes into the same shop and buys the same loaf of bread. You can exchange that those loaves of bread if you really wanted to. They are, by terms of value, the same. And in terms of whether they're identical, more or less. However, non-fungible means that you can't trade perhaps a picture of the Mona Lisa for a picture of Starry Night just because they're both pictures. Does that make sense? I hope so. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Okay, so this is a really prime example of what it means to own a digital asset. They've turned something that they've created in the digital space and they have put it on the blockchain, which is what underpins Web3, and turned it into an NFT. Now, legally, they own this, or rather they own the token that's on the blockchain that says that they own it, but that's getting a bit too technical. From a high level, they own this tweet and they could monetize it, they could put it on t-shirts if they wanted to, and if anyone else wanted to use it in such a way that they were making money, they would have to pay royalties to the person who really does own it, by definition. So anyone can own a digital asset, anyone can take anything that's already on the internet and, you know, say, this is mine, I'm writing this formally to the blockchain through a smart contract, and if anyone wants to use it, they will have to go through me first. And that's what people do. We'll discuss that a bit later as well. So it was quoted that this NFT is not just a tweet, this is the Mona Lisa of the digital world, which really puts into perspective how some people approach NFTs and digital assets. So let's start on the woes of Web3. We will dive into the wonders of Web3 shortly, but to be a fair reporter, let's discuss its woes. If Web3 is so useful, why hasn't it been adopted entirely yet? Why are we not seeing it as commercialized as other tools? Well, the three main things that are kind of preventing Web3 and Web3 technologies from, let's say, going global at this point is A, its lack of trust. There is a strong poor reputation around crypto, which again is just one thing that Web3 has been used to create. So the scams and scandals of the crypto world have left Web3 with a really bad reputation and a poor understanding of how things work. Additionally, there is a lot of technical complexity. Even if you wanted to kind of just join the ecosystem in some way, the easiest way I believe would be through sharing resources, but perhaps setting up your own smart wallet, which would allow you to create NFTs, buy NFTs, trade crypto, not necessarily trade crypto, but receive and send crypto maybe to your friends. And even that, I understand when setting it up, some people may find it has a learning overhead. But for even more technical concepts like minting, mining, tokens as well, these definitely require a technical understanding or technical background. So most of Web3 technology is based off of the concept of blockchain, and this is quite an intimidating subject for many people. And finally, scalability. Blockchain networks do struggle with processing high global transaction volumes, and they do have high storage and compute requirements, and in a lot of cases, also environmental concerns associated with them as well. So these are three big pillars that are really blocking Web3 from seeing its true potential right now. But this is kind of crazy because, as we will discuss in the Web3 Wonders, there's so much that Web3 could change. But just before that, here are a few other things that are kind of stopping it right now. So Web3 still isn't used by around 76% of the global population. And here are a few more reasons why. So we discussed technical complexity and scalability. There's also user experience. A lot of Web3 technologies require maybe a third-party application, such as your wallet. Lack of a killer app. What a killer app is one app that really brings people into a platform. So, for example, in the AI universe, back before ChatGPT, you had to be a technical person to use AI or to set up some kind of model locally. However, ChatGPT really commercialized this and allowed anyone to be able to interact with it and gain information from it. And that is what we would refer to as a killer app. That's what changed the game for AI recently. And it allowed people, both technical and not technical, to not only interact with AI, but also develop using this ecosystem. And right now, there isn't a similar application for Web3. There's also trust and security concerns, limited education and awareness on what Web3 is, because, as I mentioned before, a lot of people associate it with cryptocurrency. Interoperability challenges, which basically means that people using different devices or in different places may not have the same experience with Web3 applications due to the infrastructure, which is not yet steady. So this kind of plays upon the fact that there's regulatory uncertainty, meaning in different locales, regulations and law around Web3 and blockchain is still not quite there, still hasn't really been developed, as well as the infrastructure that is necessary. We did hear that blockchain requires quite a lot of compute power and demands a lot, which is not necessarily available in most home networks or in sometimes most towns and cities. So before we move on to Web3's wonders, does anyone have any questions on any of the Web3 detractions that we have listed? I'll give everyone 5 seconds. And if you can't type, that's fast, that's fine. Just copy your question and I will also ask at the end if anyone has any further questions. But for now, I think we are good to go. So, the Web3 wonders. Let's dive into why Web3 was all the rage in the first place and where it's kind of going. So I'd like to review some interesting facts. They're interesting to me. Hopefully they're interesting to everybody else as well. So first and foremost, the least interesting one, because I hate data, but Web3 does make open data analytics possible. So the design of Web 2, read and write, made it really easy for big tech firms to harvest user data using algorithms and selected targeting. So that's your cookies, that's you logging into applications and giving them your information. However, Web3 puts data out in the open, creating ease and accessibility of data for analysis, thereby increasing competition and benefiting all users. Now, let's define what out in the open means. What it really means is that it gives you the control of your data to let companies know whether or not you want to actually share it. You are in control of your digital identity. And what Web3 is trying to create is kind of like one identity across the internet, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's not how it is right now either. But in this way, you're able to show different applications exactly what they need in terms of information from you, rather than, just harvest all of the information. One example of this is, I think I was signing up to a newsletter the other day, or something really minor. And they requested my address. They wanted like my middle name. They wanted a little bit of information about me that did not pertain to sending emails to and from one person. And things like that, for people who may not be technical, may not know the power of their own information on the internet, they can really be taken advantage of. So Web3 is basically making it a bit easier for companies and people to access information in an open way. And this is done on the blockchain. What we do know about the blockchain is that it is a distributed and immutable ledger, meaning it is a huge network that is basically a database that cannot be changed. So distributed, immutable ledger, database that cannot be changed worldwide. That's exactly what those words mean, respectively, but in the opposite order. Since this database is public and all your smart contracts are being written to it, what this means is anybody can look at this database and can verify information that is on there. It can verify transactions. It can verify that X, Y, or Z has taken place and A, B, or C belongs to this person or that person. And this is a really powerful concept. Web3 enables semantic capabilities and artificial intelligence. Who'd have thought Web3 came first? So data is tagged and structured so that computers can read it directly. Effectively, this enables better parsing of information. That's parsing. It enables better parsing of information by computers, allowing things to be a bit more seamless. This feature improves the web's ability to generate, share, and connect content through search analytics, as it understands the meaning of words in addition to numbers or keywords. Now, we are seeing great strides in AI, especially when it comes to semantics. Semantics is effectively the meaning behind your words. So if I were to talk to a primitive AI model and say, oh, I'm feeling blue today, it might not understand what that means because blue is not a feeling in its database or in its breadth of knowledge. However, with the complexity and sophistication of AI that we're seeing right now, it is able to discern that blue is a metaphor. And that kind of semantic capability is also something that is enabled by Web3. Web3 leverages edge computing. So Web3 leverages the advancement of edge computing, where users can process data and apps at the network edge on a range of devices, including laptops, mobile phones, smart cars, and sensors. Now, what this is really saying is it's talking about IoT. It's talking about Internet of Things and the devices that are around us. Edge computing is effectively the idea of if you perhaps are coming from a networking perspective, the internet is a very, very, very vast network where most end users can be found at the very edge. And at the core of the internet, you have a lot of infrastructure that we never see and never directly or manually interact with. What people or companies endeavor or strive to do is have as much of their infrastructure working for the edge, which is where all the real people are, as possible. Because, as I said, in the center of it is a lot of infrastructure. We're talking about AES systems. We're talking about physical antennas and things like that. That's what actually powers the internet because it's, broadcasting. So at the edge is where we have our mobile phones, our, laptops, and a lot of the IoT devices around us. And Web3 just enables this a little bit further. We won't go into the hows. I feel like maybe a lot of people are wondering how these things are achieved. This is unfortunately out of the scope of our 30-minute session for today. But please, if you do have any questions, message me, and I would love to go into that in a bit more detail with you. One of the biggest things of Web3 is that it brings power back to the user. The entry of Web3 has really turned the tables on big tech firms by giving power back to users through decentralization. Any user can now learn how to benefit financially from their status updates, tweets, videos, blogs, all because of Web3. So this is quite dissimilar to perhaps you setting up a blog and using something like Google AdSense to monetize people coming into your website. Maybe when they click, you get paid like 0.01 pennies. But what Web3 is doing is it actually turns your digital likeness information into a commodity that can be bought and sold on different Web3 platforms. Really good example of this is OpenSea. I believe the URL is simply opensea.io. That's OPENSEA.io. And this is an NFT marketplace. And there are many NFT marketplaces the same way there are many online stores. And it effectively allows you to buy and sell non-fungible tokens, to trade them, and to create your own as well. And it's really fun to check out. So where is Web3 actually used? My favorite, within the metaverse. So a really interesting kind of spike of Web3 in the kind of gaming community is the idea of having digital assets that can be used in multiple different applications at once. Well, not necessarily at once, but in multiple different applications. So that would kind of be like having a sword in Minecraft that can also be used in Roblox, that exact same sword. But game items, digital assets, and currencies exist on decentralized servers, protecting them from hacking or theft. So similarly to the centralized metaphor that I gave earlier about banks, the idea of decentralization isn't used just for kind of organizations. It can be used for anything. What the idea of decentralized servers is saying here is, rather than having a multitude of servers hosted by AWS, for example, cough, cough, we would have decentralized servers that are used all over the globe and basically provide access to everyone. And they're not necessarily used by a central authority either. Not necessarily managed, by a central authority. Dapps and DAOs. These are decentralized applications such as DTube, which is effectively just YouTube, but now you can earn cryptocurrency, and it's not based on whether YouTube likes you or not. It's just based on the power of connection that you have, based on the people that interact with your videos. Really cool concept. Definitely look into it if you are interested. And also decentralized autonomous organizations. This is an emerging trend in business structure where the central authority doesn't exist. And instead, as I mentioned before, voting is done in a more decentralized fashion across multiple people or multiple systems. Smart contracts and NFTs. So non-fungible tokens, digital ownership, and ledgers, that's what we're talking about here, are immutable ledgers. So as I mentioned before, the blockchain is an immutable ledger. Whenever a transaction takes place on the in Web3, is written to the blockchain and becomes immutable. No one can change this this log. No one can change this log, and no one can kind of dispute this log because it has happened and it has been verified. The blockchain is very hard to hack, because in order for you to hack the blockchain, you would have to say this specific smart contract didn't take place, and you would have to convince the millions of other nodes on the blockchain that it didn't take place. Now, that's kind of like saying, say you're in a classroom and your friend Ade has a bag of sweets, and Ade gives the sweets to Sean, and everyone sees Ade gives the sweets to Sean. In order for you to hack this system, you would have to convince everybody that Ade didn't give the sweets to Sean. He gave them to Tracy instead. But as you know, that's quite hard to achieve. You cannot convince millions of users that that's the case. Now, it has been done before when blockchain was a bit less sophisticated. However, this idea that real things that happen cannot be changed, and they are on a ledger and it can be seen by everybody but cannot be refuted, is a really, really powerful concept. People are buying properties using smart contracts because it negates the use of, physical medium. Yes, things are being digitized, but, all it takes is your laptop to, I don't know, I was going to say be crushed, but how often does that happen? All it takes is something to happen to your laptop with all of your things on it, especially if you haven't used something like the cloud, and that proof is gone. This distributed ledger is available here. It's available in the US. It's available in Nigeria. It's available anywhere across the globe, and it's visible by everybody, and it's fact. So this is a really, really powerful concept that is being used both online and on our computer screens, as well as outside in real life as well. Decentralized finance, this is what probably most people are familiar with. So decentralized finance removes third parties and centralized institutions from financial transactions. So if I wanted to send money from myself to every country I could ever think of has gone, any other country, there would probably be a middleman. You might have heard of companies like Wise, Money Transfer, These people take a huge portion of funds in order to send your money from A to B. I can now send my money from A to B using a cryptocurrency, any cryptocurrency, maintain its value and have a really small transaction fee or a gas fee, which is basically the fee of using the blockchain, but it's negligible, and save what could be an order of, hundreds, for example, because, as you scale, as you send more, fees for third parties would usually increase as well. Anyway, so I can send this all the way to another country. I'm not going to say for free, but for, about 99% of its, wait, I don't want to say 99% of this, that's its price. That implies the fee is 99% for a negligible fee, I'll say, which is, again, really amazing. One really cool thing about this is people who are in countries that, for some reason, may have government shutdowns or may be heavily oppressed and may not be able to get money in traditionally, may not be able to get fiat currency in, are able to use things like blockchain to bring money in and still feed their families and look after themselves, which is an amazing, amazing way that this technology is being used, and charities are definitely taking advantage of this. They're setting people up. Things like the Red Cross are really facilitating this, which is amazing. Internet of Things. So the Web3 employs smart and consistent data connection with applications and users based on semantics. So your Alexas, don't want to say that too loud because I've got one right here. Things like your Alexas and, I don't know, smart fridges are also not necessarily connected to the blockchain, no, but they do use Web3 technology to facilitate their connection and their use of semantics, or being able to understand semantics. And identity management. Web3 enables users to have a self-sovereign identity. You create, not create the person that you are, but you are able to really manage what information people have about you. There are Web3 browsers out there. There is a Web3 everything out there that just changes the internet as we know it and changes how we interact with things. It's really, really interesting to see. And if you are interested, I would definitely have a look into that as well. So what is next? We've gone over some ways that Web3 is currently being used, but let's explore where it may take us in the future really quickly. So in numbers, decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, are an emerging new organizational model with a total market capitalization of $16.5 billion in 2023 alone. That means that DAOs, these organizations, are already moving this volume of funds around and working with this. They're extremely successful and usually relieve a lot of societal pressures or bureaucratic pressures within organizations. So 46% of the DeFi market, the DeFi market is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 46% all the way through to 2030, which is an insane increase if you're familiar with finance and what this means. And it's basically just saying how cryptocurrency and decentralized finance is going to grow and take over, not necessarily take over, but grow and change finance as we know it. There are governments in our countries who are creating a cryptocurrency. So sorry, I just saw something on my other screen. In the UK, for example, they are thinking of creating a digital version of the pound. In the US, they've already done it. You may have seen USDT floating around. And this is basically backed. This is backed by the actual fiat currency, but it's a cryptocurrency version so that they can have a bit more control over what we already know to be a decentralized area space. And finally, major companies like Meta, Alphabet, and Netflix are really heavily investing in Web3 projects. So Meta, for example, has already allocated $20 billion for the metaverse and Web3 development. If you're wondering, oh, really, I haven't heard anything about that, you may have come across new tools like the Oculus, well, I think that was the old name for it. The Meta Quest 2, Meta Quest 3 came out, Apple Vision Pro came out. Who just created another one, another VR headset? It was announced the other day. Gosh, I should probably put that in here. But effectively, a lot of different Samsung, thank you very much. They created one as well. A lot of these organizations are seeing the value in Web3, and you know that when these organizations start to come up with these things a bit early, that they're going to grow. I myself have a VR headset. It's insane. If you ever used a VR headset, definitely find one or go to like a VR club, not club, but there are these activity centers where you can put on VR. And VR is not just for gaming. VR can also be a productive workspace where you put on your headset, you're isolated from your environment, and it has all of these projected monitors on your screen. On your digital screen. I've used it before. I was wondering, is this actually going to make me feel any better? But it actually did. My younger brother watches YouTube on my VR headset, which is crazy. It makes you feel like you're in a cinema because like everywhere is black. You've got this really big screen. There's just so much that you could do with it. And I really like the Apple Vision Pro because that starts to incorporate technologies like MR, mixed reality, which is where it integrates with the real environment around you. So I believe in the Apple Vision Pro, you can if you've got a piece of paper that is written in another language, you could put on your headset and just read it in English, for example. And there are just so many different really cool tools and techniques and features in these headsets. So definitely worth looking into. Did you know DAOs are the future of organizations? Decentralized autonomous organizations represent an organizational model where decision-making is done through smart contracts and voting mechanisms on the blockchain. There are already DAOs managing billions of dollars in assets, as we saw earlier. The resource demands of Web3 do raise environmental concerns. So while Web3 does have immense potential, one of the criticisms that it faces is its environmental impact, particularly from energy-intensive blockchain networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum. However, newer technologies like Ethereum 2.0 and other blockchains like Polkadot aim to drastically reduce energy consumption and are effectively doing this. And finally, we are getting closer to interoperability. One of Web3's goals is to enable seamless transfer of assets, identity, and information from across different platforms. So this means that you can carry your data, your avatar, or your tokens from one service or game to another. So that has been an overview on Web3's capabilities. And if you are interested in finding out a bit more about these things, please do drop me a message. You can visit my website, or maybe I'll put my links to my social media in the chat. But I'd love to open the floor to questions. And I do see one in the chat already from Mercy. Mercy asks, how do companies ensure data security? Thank you, everyone. How do companies ensure data security and privacy in Web3 applications, especially when dealing with sensitive user information? This is a really good question. I'm assuming that this has come from the whole idea that, when you write user transactions, they go onto the blockchain. Now, when you have a smart contract, yes, everything is written to the blockchain, but it doesn't say that Mercy has purchased this on the blockchain. Instead, when you have a wallet, a digital wallet, this is assigned a randomized number or a really long key. And these keys are written to the blockchain. Now, you can have multiple of these keys. It's kind of how in Monzo, you can have multiple virtual cards, kind of like that. I'm not sure if anyone uses like non-high street banks, but I think that's a really good feature of Monzo. Anyway, so you have, let's say, a pot or a digital card, and it's saying this digital card has bought X from this one, and they did this at this time, and this is what it was, and da 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 da. And it's all about tokenization. It's tokenizing or creating a digital version of different things. So when you look at the blockchain, it will literally, I don't want to say that it will look like you're just reading numbers because there is actual words in there, but it won't say that you, as Mercy, have done X, Y, or Z. It will say that your wallet has done X, Y, or Z. So that's one way that blockchain implements security, because no one will know that that is you unless you tell someone that that's you. And you're not necessarily going to tell the millions of people around the globe, hey, this token identity is me. This ID is me. Another thing is, just because something is written to the blockchain doesn't mean that all the information about the transaction is written to the blockchain. At the end of the day, companies, whether they're Dapps, DAOs, or traditional companies, do have a duty of care and legal legislation binding them to keep your personal information private. So they may record your personal information in their own databases and subsystems, and it will only be the transaction, the actual, exchange that is written to the blockchain. So that is one way that they could also manage security as well. I hope that answers your question. Do we have any other questions? No worries, Mercy. If anyone has any other questions, please do let me know in the chat, or feel free to message. I will put my LinkedIn and Instagram and Web3Z in the channel. But in that case, perhaps you might be wrapping up. Oh, what would Web 4 look like? So what a great question. It's hard to say because Web 3 is barely here. I think what comes to mind straight away, and maybe it's because I'm a gamer, is those I think Web 4 would bridge what we just discussed with Web 3, reading, writing, and owning, with like consciousness. So we would now be working with neurotechnology. It'd kind of be like Web 3, but also with Neuralink combined. So now maybe you've got like a chip in your head or something a bit more lightweight than a whole headset, and you can literally enter a digital world, but now you've got the 4D sensation of like feeling and stuff like that. But you can also interact with the world and buy things with currency as though, the same way that you do in Web3. And again, all of these transactions, all these interactions are written to some kind of blockchain or something like that. I've never thought of that. What an excellent question. But that's maybe how I see it. And I don't know, I've often asked myself, would I ever do that? I would never get a chip in my brain, but I would maybe get an implant, maybe. I don't know. I'm just too curious for my own good. But what a great question.
I think there are 2 questions in the Q&A section. I don't know if you can see those.
Q&A. I don't think so. I do see 2 questions in the chat.
So one of the questions is the data encrypted and secured in Web3?
Yes, it is for the most part. Now the blockchain, you can just look at it. You can literally just go onto a random website and it will kind of show you the latest transactions. But for the most part, especially when dealing with companies who work with this information, they would encrypt and secure it, yes. And when I say ID, like you have a digital wallet ID, this is a encrypted token, an encrypted string.
Awesome, thanks. And then the last question in the Q&A is, what role could edge nodes play in improving latency and user experience for blockchain-based systems?
Well, edge nodes, whether your system is blockchain or not, it's something that in computer science is really upheld anyway. So edge nodes are beneficial for systems that are blockchain and not blockchain. But and a good example of this is how Amazon has what they call not just data centers, it has smaller versions of data centers, and it puts them in remote locations so that when you're exchanging information, you don't have to go through the core of the internet, which is what I was discussing earlier, that most people's devices are at the edge of the internet. And mostly when you are sending a request from my computer to someone else's computer across the globe, you do have to go through the core of the internet to get there. And that can introduce some latency. What edge nodes do in terms of maybe these data centers that are placed in remote locations is it effectively creates a shortcut for your request as it goes across the internet. So yes, it would significantly reduce latency. But it's not Web3 that puts those data centers in there, in these places. They just happen to be there, and Web3 can use that concept.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a complete wealth of knowledge. Unfortunately, we've gone slightly over, so we are going to have to wrap up. But I do want to take the time to thank you so much. On behalf of everyone in the chat as well, I've learned so much and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I'll put my information in the chat if anyone wants to connect. I do see 2 more questions, so please just send them to me and I will definitely have a chat with you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you've enjoyed. Bye.